Welcome to the deep dive. We're digging into King Charles's trip to Australia today, all these articles you sent. It's amazing how these royal tours, they kind of become like a Rorschach test, right? They reveal all these underlying tensions.
Yeah, definitely. All the pomp and ceremony, that's always a given. But there's this undercurrent, this time, something different, especially, I mean, think about Australia. They're wrestling with that whole monarchy connection.
And right off the bat, you see this stark difference, right? You've got
Yeah.
the Sydney Opera House all lit up, images of Charles and Camilla's past trips. I mean, that's a statement right there from the Australian government.
Hard to miss, for sure.
But then, practically next door, you've got protesters chanting, "Not my king," at a local church during his visit. It's like,
A visual representation of, the internal struggle in Australia, the monarchy. Does it even matter anymore? In this day and age, especially for a country trying to find its own way, its
mhm.
own identity.
And it's not like this is Charles's first time down under either. Everyone remembers '83, Charles and Diana's tour, the absolute chaos, the excitement. It was a huge moment for, well, royal fans. This time feels different, wouldn't you say?
The energy's definitely different. Some of these articles, they talk about a kind of apathy, especially with the younger generation.
Hmm.
They don't have that same connection to the royals. It's a world away from, say, Diana's walkabouts in Australia. Those were iconic.
Speaking of sending messages, what about those 6 Australian state governors all skipping out on that event with Charles? That's got to be deliberate. It feels like a power move, don't you think?
Oh, it's fascinating. Politically, it's all about we're respecting the will of the people, a lot of whom want a republic. But behind the scenes, it's hard not to see it as, distancing themselves from the crown just a bit. Charles is still finding his feet as king. You can't ignore that.
It really makes you think, are we seeing old alliances, those old ties starting to fray? These are elected officials, they answer to the people, and more people are wondering what's the point of the monarchy anymore?
Exactly. It highlights that tightrope Charles has to walk, respecting tradition, but also recognizing that public opinion, it's shifting, it's changing all the time.
And beyond all the political theater, there's the personal side, Charles's health. That article you flagged, A.N. Wilson in the Daily Mail, it really dug into that. You don't often read about a monarch bringing his own blood supply on a trip. That's something else.
It is, but it gets at something deeper about what it means to be king, those burdens.
Hmm.
This isn't just a vacation. There's this sense of duty, maybe even risk involved.
Yeah.
And then Wilson brings up the idea of Charles maybe even going against medical advice. Adds a whole other layer to it.
It's tough to unpack, right? There's duty, the expectation that the show must go on, but then you have this man battling cancer, maybe putting himself at risk for a trip where the welcomes, well, lukewarm at best. At what cost?
Yeah. Yeah, the optics of it are complicated, for sure. Speaks to the pressures Charles is facing, both from within and from the whole institution itself. It's early days. Who knows how the public will judge all this in the end, but it's a conversation that's not going away anytime soon. Makes you wonder, on a personal level, how he handles it all. But speaking of personal lives, let's switch gears a bit. There was this other royal story that really that caught my eye. Earl Charles Spencer, Princess Diana's brother, and his, well, let's just say, intriguing personal life.
Right. Into the gossip pages a bit, though. Gotta admit, even I was surprised by some of these details. Talk about a modern fairy tale. Love blossoming over ancient burial grounds and podcasting. Who knew?
Not your typical royal romance, that's for sure. Spencer and this podcast co-host of his, Kat Jarman, it's a new spin on the whole aristocratic love story. And then you throw in this legal battle with his ex-wife Karen. It's like a soap opera.
Yeah. It does make you wonder, can these royals ever truly escape the spotlight? Even someone like Earl Spencer, who's, not exactly front and center. But is it just juicy gossip? Or could this actually, I don't know, have some wider impact on the royal family? What do you think?
It's easy to brush it off as tabloid fodder, sure. But any kind of scandal, even a whiff of it, especially with someone so connected to the royals, it has a way of, rippling outward. Don't forget Earl Spencer. He's Diana's brother, Harry and William's uncle.
Yeah.
He may not be a working royal, but he's part of that fabric, and people are still, they're obsessed with anything Diana.
Good point. It reminds you that these aren't just, isolated incidents. It's all part of a bigger story, right? Interwoven lives, legacies, the whole deal.
Exactly. And speaking of legacies, let's shift focus again, shall we? To another branch of the family, Harry and Meghan. That real estate purchase in Portugal near Princess Eugenie, that raised some eyebrows, I'd say.
Strategic, right? It's not like they're exactly laying low in Lisbon. What's your read? Are they playing the long game here?
It's a smart move, got to give them that. Choosing a place near Eugenie, who's still close with Harry, it allows them to maintain that connection to the family, but on their own terms, you know?
A softer re-entry, maybe? Not fully back in the fold, but keeping those lines open, at least with certain members of the family.
Right, right. And let's be real, Portugal gives them what? Privacy, distance from those British tabloids, which, let's face it, have been a huge source of stress. This way, they control the narrative, their image on the world stage.
Calculated distance. It's a theme, isn't it? Staying connected but on their own path. Their move, though, it also brings up something else that kept popping up in these articles, the whole issue of the British Empire's legacy. Specifically, these calls for reparations for slavery.
Absolutely. And it's a heavy topic, something that weighs on the entire Commonwealth, and something Charles is going to have to face head on in those meetings with lawmakers in Australia.
It's a conversation that's been a long time coming, and it feels like it's finally, gaining some real traction globally. Reading through these articles, you get this sense of urgency, especially from the descendants of those who suffered under colonial rule.
Oh, for sure. And it's not just about, acknowledging past wrongs anymore. It's about action, real action. Financial reparations, returning stolen artifacts, a true reckoning with history.
And that puts Charles in a tricky spot, doesn't it? He's representing this institution that, let's be honest, played a big part in those injustices, but he's also talked about, reconciliation, understanding. How do you bridge that gap?
That's the million-dollar question, right? The articles you shared, they show just how divided people are on this. Some say apologies aren't enough, symbolic gestures, that's not going to cut it. They want to see action, real action, reparations, getting those stolen artifacts back, a real, honest look at the past.
It's one of those things so complicated. You've got the weight of history on one side, the undeniable harm done by colonialism, but then there's the reality today, the politics, the economics. How do you even begin to put a price tag on centuries of suffering?
It's a conversation full of tension, for sure, but we have to have it. These talks about reparations, they force us to confront these inequalities that are still here today. For Charles, this is delicate. He's got to acknowledge that past pain, but also somehow find a way forward towards a future that's, well, more fair for everyone.
It's kind of wild when you think about it. This royal tour, it was supposed to be, what, a meet and greet? Now it's a lightning rod.
Yeah.
The future of the monarchy, the legacy of empire, it's all on the table. Feels like every step Charles takes, he's walking that tightrope between tradition and progress.
It's like a microcosm, The monarchy struggles, the world struggles all coming to a head. And those conversations, the actions that come out of them, they'll have an impact for generations to come. It's bigger than just what kind of king will Charles be. It's about the future we're building, right? One that learns from the past, but also fights for a world that's actually fair.
Gives you a lot to think about, that's for sure. Even now, with all the news and social media, the past, it still has a way of making itself heard. So for everyone listening, as you keep up with King Charles's trip, remember, look past the headlines. There's always more to the story. It's history, it's politics, it's people's lives, all woven together. Until next time, keep those minds open, keep asking those questions, and keep on diving deep.